Well. It's a Wednesday, which usually doesn't mean I'm recording a podcast, but this week I wanted to give a double dose because honestly, well, you can see from the title. Number one, I actually want to give the ONE FC card a little bit of love because it's pretty damn good actually. Like it's you've got Reiner de Ritter versus Malakin. That's a good fight. Soldic versus Ramazanov, which isn't as good, but I'm going to try and hype it up anyways. And I'm really looking forward to Lin Hishin, or Hishin Lin, depending on what combination of last name, first name we're going with. And Denise Zampoanga is also a really fun fight. So, like, really fun fights on Prime. And it's kind of a weird thing because, like, on one hand, I hate the people that run ONE FC. And on the other hand, I want like more options in the MMA market. And another thing I'm going to talk about, of course, is the Conor McGregor thing, which you have noticed if you looked at the title. And if you're a big Conor McGregor fan and you exist in this world where Conor McGregor can do no wrong, I don't know what to tell you. You're going to be offended. And that's really about all I can say about that until I dive into it. And let's talk about the PFL first, because we just had the PFL World Championships last Friday, so less than a week ago. And it was not a night worth the pay-per-view cost, especially not at $50. Like, that was my problem. It's not the PFL wants to go pay-per-view, because I can sort of get behind that. But it should be pretty damn cheap, because at $50, you're basically saying we are UFC caliber. And the problem here is that, just on paper, your top fight has someone who lost in the UFC and is gone. Your co-main event has the same. Your fourth fight down has the same. Your fifth fight down is two ex-UFC fighters who OAM won a lot, but like didn't really impress. And then further on down, you got Wilkinson and Akhmedov, former UFC fighters, Shaman Rice, Marlon Moraes, former UFC fighters, Jeremy Stevens, former UFC fighter, and Gleason Tebow. So you have a bunch of like UFC castoffs. But you want me to believe that this is comparable to the UFC. And to be clear, almost all of these guys were cut from the UFC and no one was like hankering for it not to happen. It's not like a case of Corey Anderson leaving for Bellator, where the UFC didn't re-sign them and presumably wanted them, but because Bellator actually put an offer in, it put them out of the price range. These are all people who probably could have been re-signed for relatively low money, and the UFC just went, nah. And like specifically, like Aspen Ladd has said that she would have re-signed had they let her fight at 145. And that they were interested in re-signing her, but they wanted her as a bantamweight. And then you got Larissa Pachenko, who probably deserves a chance in the UFC again. Brendan Logain probably deserves a chance in the UFC again. Probably deserved it after the highly controversial Dana White Contenders Series non-signing. But no. Like, your big fight for this card was a rematch of a rematch that was 2-0 and was not a super exciting fight either time. And this time it was good. I'm going to be talking a lot about Larissa Pacheco, Kayla Harrison. That's the big story off this card. But it really wasn't a seller. At the bottom of the pile, you had Baggio Ali Walsh defeating, I'm not even going to say his name. He's a 1-4 amateur fighter. I'm not going to get super excited about Muhammad Ali's grandson until he actually does something. And this goes for any combat sports legend. If GSP's kid or grandson, I don't think he has any kids right now, so we're talking really long ago, gets into MMA, I'm going to be interested when he starts doing something. If Manny Pacquiao were to have a kid who decided to do MMA, I would get interested when he starts doing something. There's nothing to get excited about here. Anyways, he did terminate his opponent in 45 seconds. So congratulations. Dakota Dicheva also won really easily in her fight. Magomed Kiramov versus Gleason Tebow was dull. And I really want people who advocate for training partners to fight each other. Like back in the day when everyone was like, oh, Rashad Evans and Keith Jardine totally need to fight each other. Or John Fitch and Josh Koscheck totally need to fight each other. Because seeing training partners fight each other is going to be awesome. They have to watch this fight. Because this fight sucked. And part of that is that like just a combination of these two fighters is not necessarily a great fight. But part of it is also they really know each other. And it's what it is. Natan Schulte submitted Jeremy Stephens. Jeremy Stephens is at a cringe level that I just don't want to see. It's Sean Strickland cringe. And he's not winning. Like, at least with Strickland, it's like, okay, well, at least I kind of buy you as a top guy at middleweight. With Stephens, I'm probably going to pick you to lose repetitively. And you're cringy as shit. It's not a great combo. Rob Wilkinson stopped Omari Akhmedov, or more appropriately, the doctor did, at the end of the second round. That was a good fight. If you're looking for a fight to go back and watch on this card to kind of make it worth your time to check out Harrison Pacheco, it is this fight right here. It was violent. It was chaotic. It was everything Rob Wilkinson wants. And he ended up with $1 million. Moving on further down, Sadibou Sai versus Delano Taylor. I wanted this fight to be good. I really did. I bought in a little bit that Delano Taylor has the requisite upside physicality, and he has some smarts and some put together. No, not really. Not really. Just basically sat at range with Sadibou Sai and it was bad. It was bad. Olivier Aubert-Mercier had a cool stoppage against Stevie Ray. The fight otherwise wasn't particularly amazing, but it was a cool stoppage. Aspen Ladd and Julia Budd was a fight to forget. Anton Delia made pretty short work of Matthias Scheffel. Brandon Logain had a really solid fight. Like he came out and he did essentially what I thought he would do, and eventually got a finish. He got a straight right into punches and a knee. Very nicely done. He exposed really a lot of what I think is lacking in Bubba Jenkins. And Bubba Jenkins is a frustrating fighter because everything wrong with him is not physical. Like I've said this with like a lot of people. When a fighter gets old or just starts their career on the low end of the physicality spectrum, they're hard capped, but they're hard capped in a way that you can't blame them for. Bubba Jenkins, I think, is hard capped just because he's obsessed with being flashy and slick and not in any way fighting to a winning condition. Anyways, he lost. I'm happy about that. Logain got the $1 million. There were some people that legitimately were like, no. Brandon Logain would actually be better off financially if the UFC had signed him. No, he wouldn't have. I think people like are under this weird conception of like MMA pay. And I've said this before because like, for example, one guy responded to my tweet about this and was like, yeah, but they'd all be multimillionaires in the UFC. No, the UFC doesn't make millionaires. Really at any point. Like a UFC fighter making $1 million in one night is unheard of. And over the course of a year, you're talking like super active champion money. Like I think I worked it out. Like to make $1 million on what Logain probably would be making right now. Let's assume he came off and he was successful in Dana White Contender Series and got to like a low end ranking. We're talking like maybe 20K. So let's say he has 3 fights a year and he wins 2 of them. He would be fighting for 10 years to make $1 million. 10 years. I'm not factoring in like the sponsorship deal that they have. They do get a little bit of, I forget what they call it, the fighter incentive package. But no. I don't understand why anyone who's not like top 15, but the bottom third of the top 15 in the UFC. Down to like the, I don't know, top 30 or so. Honestly, give PFL a try, see if you can win the million. Because it's way more money than you're going to get elsewhere. And then Kayla Harrison lost to Larissa Pacheco. The interesting things about this is that almost every time Kayla fights, we get this kind of like weird like legacy talk with her. And I've said this before. I said this one in my preview. I don't think that there's a way for Kayla Harrison to have a particularly notable legacy. She exists at a time period when, number one, women's MMA in general is still in a fairly weak position. But number two, her division doesn't even exist. Like, that's the thing, is a lot of people are like, she should have signed with the UFC. Can she make 145? Because she's pretty damn huge. Look at her warming up for this fight. Working with Mike Thomas Brown, former WEC featherweight champion, and a legitimately sized featherweight. And you tell me that, like, no. She just needs to, like, take her diet seriously and she'll make 145 no problem. And this is the thing. The UFC doesn't even have a 145 division. And when they had Cyborg, they actively did not build one. So I have no idea what she's supposed to do in these people's minds. She brings it upon herself because she talks about her own legacy a lot. Like, she was trying to trying to rip down Cyborg's resume and legacy on Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour. And it's not that I like supremely disagree with anything she said. I disagree in shades, but like, there's nothing like terribly false that she said. But it's just a topic you shouldn't really bring up if you yourself are probably never going to have a legacy. Probably not. Anyways, the fight was pretty good. Pacheco basically punished her in every position. She'd get taken down. She'd throw a hammer fist from bottom. She dominated the stand-up. She basically ignored Harrison's takedown setup, which was to throw an overhand that would land and then kind of transition into a shot. And Pacheco just was like, I don't care about the overhand. I'll just defend the takedown. And eventually it started to work. Harrison brought up open scoring in a recent interview after this. And now, to be clear, a lot of the headlines are making it seem like Harrison suggesting that, like, if this fight was openly scored, she would have approached it differently or done something differently or maybe won. I think if you read the full context of her comments, that's not what she's suggesting. She's just generally a proponent of open scoring. And my problem is that, okay, we have open scoring. Certain commissions use open scoring. And Invicta, of course, uses open scoring. And a lot of people will be like, well, I don't want to watch Invicta. You don't have to watch. I'm not at this point, I'm not even advocating you watch an open scored fight. I'm just advocating you maybe look at the results of an open scoring fight. Because I think there's this thought from open scoring fans that a fighter will be down 2-0 or know that it's 1-1 and suddenly unveil this fantastic fight-ending combination that they just haven't been using until now. Like, I think if you watch a couple of open scored fights, just find them on YouTube or whatever, they don't look any different in terms of like level. That's kind of, so I don't know. I'm not really interested in it. The problem with judging is, one, the lack of understanding of judging from that corners often showcase, that fighters often showcase, and that the judges themselves often showcase. Making it open or changing the criteria or whatever, I don't think actually fixes the problem that it's humanity. And this is a sport where there's a tremendous amount of not knowing stuff. I use Sikjitsu always as my example. Listen to a Sikjitsu fighter's corner. That's Michael Chiesa's gym. That's Juliana Pena's old gym. That's Brady Heastan from the recent UFC cards gym. And listen to their advice. It's terrible. Listen to interviews with their head coach, Rick Little. It's terrible. But this is the most recognizable gym in the Pacific Northwest. That's the problem with the sport right now, is that there's a lot of people in positions of power and influence that just aren't actually good. I think like that's the thing, is I think people ignore that like a lot of success in MMA is just physical. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to bust anyone's bubble about like the idea of like, oh no, technique can overcome any level of athleticism. No, it really can't. Like there's a point where like we have seen countless better technical fighters lose to better athletes because that's what happens. All right. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have on the Kayla Harrison, the PFL. One more weird thing. PFL is still chasing like the Cyborg versus Harrison fight. And don't get me wrong, that's a big fight. That's a fight to put together. But an executive from PFL literally was like, the offer is still on the table. Fight of the century, Cyborg versus Harrison. Aren't you just like crapping on your own champion? Like Big John McCarthy responded to that tweet and said, yeah, aren't you just absolutely crapping on your own champion by like just dismissing her like that? I don't know. A fourth fight between the two still has interest, I guess. It definitely can work, but I don't know. And there's no one else. There's no one else for these two to fight. If they're going to keep fighting at 155. I guess they're trying to aim for like Aspen Ladd, but like if you saw Aspen Ladd fight against Julia Budd, no, that's another one. Aspen Ladd's gym has like a lot of success, and every time I hear their coaches speak, I think they're terrible, but they have success. So I don't know. It's a paper resume. Let's talk about Conor McGregor. Let's talk about Conor McGregor. Okay. If you're completely unfamiliar with what's going on with Conor McGregor right now, we have Conor McGregor probably doing steroids. By his own words. He was taken out of the USADA testing pool. And now he is basically looking to waive the 6-month re-entry clause that is usually there for a fighter when they re-enter the testing pool. For whatever reason they exited it. And he wants that probably because he wants to rush back. And here's the thing. Conor fans and Conor himself will say, I gave everything to this sport. I don't know what I'm trying to do an Irish accent. I'm bad at it. And I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to be able to recover healthily. He basically crapped on Anthony Smith, who had a similar leg injury. And basically was like, you have had my similar leg injury. How dare you deny me the right to heal properly? Here's the thing. I don't actually have a problem with this concept of a fighter after suffering a major injury being taken out of the testing pool to heal properly, to make use of substances that are normally not allowed for a USADA tested fighter so that they can heal, they can have a better career afterwards and a better life afterwards. I don't actually fundamentally have a problem with that. But that's not the rules. That's not the rule. No one else grabs that. Anthony Smith, for a similar leg injury, was not allowed to do this. Chris Weidman, for a actually worse leg injury because his break was much less clean, is not allowed to do this. Corey Hill, RIP, was not allowed to do this. Also, probably Corey Hill didn't even have the money to do it. This is not how it's been done. And you'll be like, but Mike, you're a pro-change guy. You would like to see change happen in the sport. Yeah, that's not what this is, though. This is USADA. If this is all granted, make sure to mention that it's not all granted, but like the fact that it's this public suggests that there are deep talks going on about making this possible. Is for Conor only. Kind of like when John Jones was given the pulsing exception. It's like, okay, but are you going to give this to anyone else? And to their credit, they actually did. Josh Quinlan more or less got the same, got the pulsing rule essentially for himself. So, but they also announced USADA in an official capacity that was going to be something they were looking at. There is no official comment. There is nothing from USADA, nothing from the UFC that suggests that this is anything but Conor McGregor being given license to cheat. And we haven't even gotten into the part where, like, okay, you're healing, you're fixing the leg up, whatever. Why you gotta look huge? Why do you suspiciously have to look incredibly jacked out of the gills, bigger than you've ever looked, and constantly posting pictures of you flexing in front of the mirror? Like, does anyone buy that what Conor McGregor probably did, is in any way just the orthopedic course of medication for healing the injury? Because I looked it up, I asked some people involved in the field. I've had my own history of leg injuries. As a result, I've met some people. And the thing is that, okay, it would be a relatively mild dose of some things that are on the USADA's prohibited substance list for a couple of weeks. And then you probably would either be on the path to healing, or we need to do something else. That would be basically how it goes about. They almost all said that they all said there is no chance that under the medically prescribed amounts that Conor McGregor would be getting as big as he is. Because while the leg is healing, you in theory would still be relatively immobile. It would also be recommended that you are fairly inactive, fairly limited of stress of the body. This is the Brock Lesnar loophole all over again. You remember, this is why the 6 months actually clause kind of came into play, is because of the Mark Hunt Lesnar court case. This would be the first time that someone has been able to remove themselves from the pool, come back in, and not even have to wait before taking a fight. It's kind of ridiculous. Now, people are going to bring up Section 4.4, Section 5.7 of the USADA handbook. Here's the problem. 4.4 dictates around the therapeutic use exemption. Here's the problem. We go back to the fact that, once again, there probably is way more going on here than the simple medical prescription would be, which would be the basis of the therapeutic use exception. And you also have to put that through the athletic commission. And as far as we know, that's not been granted. That's the thing. They're extreme. TEUs are extremely rare and are usually pretty easy to find on a public knowledge level because they have to be filed through a government agency. There's none of that. And 5.7 is a returning athletes. I have no idea why this is even a thing, because it predominantly deals with retired fighters who have had their contract or promotional relationship with the UFC cut, either via them being cut or their contract running out, or that they are late replacements for a fight, because when they sign someone off, say, the Mississippi regional scene, yes, they're not going to have 6 months of USADA testing for them. None of these apply. Neither of these categories apply. And we'll finally bring it to the end. Is this cheating? I can't say that it is, because we don't know if he did anything. We got the eyeball test. We've got his words more or less confirming it when he says, I am ready for testing. My samples are ready, suggesting that they weren't before. But this is USADA and the UFC, if granted, opening up every possible door for Conor to cheat. Every possible advantage. And this is the thing. I've often said that like PEDs in sport are something that USADA will never actually get rid of. Some of the most likely PED cheats are guys who have not tested positive for anything. And we could say, oh no, that's because they're natural. I doubt it. I have my doubts. But the problem is that USADA is supposed to be trying to make this a level playing field. Trying to make this a fair and presumably safer environment. Doing this is the absolute opposite of what USADA was brought in to do or to theoretically accomplish. It's opening the door, every possible door, for Conor McGregor to cheat, and no other fighter, save Brock Lesnar, and maybe John Jones when the UFC was high on him, would do this. But no one else. This is a drug testing organization that had Josh Barnett prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, by the way, but and this is in USADA's words, that his positive test a couple years ago, this maybe like 2016, would have been was a tainted supplement. That there was a completely no fault. He brought in 6 bottles of the same supplement, and they tested them all, and they found only 1 bottle was tainted. The other 5 were fine. And he had them tested at his own expense, and they still wanted to suspend him. And I'm not here like bleeding heart for Josh Barnett, because Josh Barnett has earned his reputation and owns it as a drug cheat. But that was an example of like going above and beyond to prove that in this circumstance, I am not. And they still do it. Or the better example would be, I should have written the drug down. Meldiminium, the Eastern European, it was developed in Latvia. Heart medication that is that a lot of MMA fighters from over there were prescribed. Admittedly, probably overprescribed, but they were prescribed it. WADA made it illegal, and USADA usually follows suit, and they did. And then they tested the fighters within the half-life of the drug, and then suspended 3 of them. I think they waived 2 of the other ones, but they had like 7 positive tests for it. It's like, oh my God, you guys are cheating. No, they were taking a substance that is medically prescribed, whether it should be or not, different story, but is medically prescribed and was legal and is probably still in their system from before. And this was back in 2015, 2016. And they threw the book at like 2 of them. Like, it's silly. It's silly. It's silly to think that like anyone but Conor would get this, even this possibility, even this conversation. Like if anybody else came out with Conor McGregor statements on the matter, USADA would be just like, so we're suspending you for like years because this is ridiculous. He is very clearly on something. And that doesn't morally offend me. What offends me is the idea like, no, nothing unusual is happening here. Nothing at all. All right, let's talk about One Fighting Championship, Prime 5. I like this fight card. I like these fights more than probably is going to come across. Because in the main event, you have the light heavyweight title, Reiner de Ritter versus Anatoly Malkinen. Malkinen, I think, is his name. I don't know why I always forget his name. I do. I like this guy. I really do. He's got a wrestling background. Super powerful dude. Strong. Good. Like I said, good wrestling. His striking is a bit weird. Because he definitely has power in his hands. And he definitely has effectiveness. But it is definitely also not a striking style that I would think anyone would really want to learn. It's kind of awkward, kind of open. with a lot of hooks to it. So as a result, you end up with probably some great counter opportunities. And he hasn't fought any like supremely great strikers. Like the best striker he's probably fought, if we're being honest, might actually be Kirill Grushenko, which isn't amazing because Grushenko is really more of a wrestler than anything else. But he's been rocking it. He's been knocking out first round knockout, second round knockout, first round knockout, second round knockout. Dude is a killer. Dude is a finisher. Even submitted Bagayev, which doesn't sound great because it's like Bagayev's got like 22 losses. But normally how you beat Agiev is not out grappling him. Like it's not unheard of. But like to go that route is interesting. And he's fighting De Ridder. De Ridder is a natural middleweight. He's a very, very good middleweight. I am a big De Ridder fan. Dude has an amazing body lock wrestling game. His entries are slick. His ability to stay on top is incredibly slick. He denies you opportunities to do anything while he is changing positions and locking you down. It's amazing. Like, seriously, if you want to learn how to apply BJJ to MMA, this is a guy to look at. His stand-up, what little of it we see is fine, but not great. He's kind of one's version of Andre Muniz, essentially. But, without Muniz's like need to be like revolutionary. I've said this about Muniz after he fought Uriah Hall. We had back control like for a really long time and like didn't go for a rear naked choke at all. He's like, no, I must go for an armbar. No. De Ridder is like Muniz, but like with way better fundamentals. Not necessarily on a technical level, but like on a decision-making level. Like he is here to show off his BJJ, and he doesn't need it to be flashy. It can be, but he doesn't need it to be. And the big problem here is that, and I hate to really oversimplify this, but it kind of really comes down to you're fighting Malikan, who is way thicker, stronger, like legit, despite being only 6 feet tall, legit heavyweight size. Or at least legit 205er size. And De Ridder is not even an especially large middleweight, if we're being honest. Like, he's 6'4", so like he is large at middleweight. He is long, he is tall, and all those things. But in terms of like his mass, I don't think it's even that high. We'll see what he weighs in at, I guess. And we've seen Malikan against decent wrestlers like Grushenko, I mentioned before, but also Amir Ali Akbari, who has a ton of problems in terms of like probably being on all of the gear in the world. Going back to the Conor McGregor conversation, but is a phenomenal wrestler and really could not do anything with Malikan. So I have to go with Malikan to win by TKO, but I'm incredibly interested in it and the fight, even if it essentially comes down to what I'm saying it comes down to, that power discrepancy, that strength discrepancy. I am actually excited as all hell to see what De Ridder tries. Roberto Robocop Soljic versus Merab Ramazanov. I like his name. I really like his name. This feels like a fight that Soljic is set up to win. He's the big signing in one. He's got crowd-pleasing style. He's got credentials as a boxer and as a mixed martial artist. He had an incredibly successful run in KSW in multiple weight classes. Has often fought men bigger than himself. And I do think Ramazanov, who about the same height and everything, but looks like notably thicker, is the hope to win here. Now, Ramazanov did beat Sebastian Katastem relatively recently. And this is a similar matchup in the sense of wrestler versus striker, but Soljic moves much better, throws way better combinations, and is just generally a better wrestler than Katastem. Better athlete than Katastem as well. Less reliant on one shot, one hitter quitter than Katastem. Who's a good fighter. I want to make that clear. Katastem is an excellent fighter. He just is kind of like more of a slugger than anything else. And has really good power, but like there's no real setup to it. Ramazanov was able to kind of just run up to him and force grappling exchanges. I don't think that happens with Soljic. I think Soljic is well enough coached, well enough schooled, has a good enough feel for the cage, has enough feel for the game to make it way more difficult. And the fact that Ramazanov is not a finisher. Mitch Chilson stated this during the fight with Katastem. He is a wrestler, not a grappler. He has a couple of like early on submissions in his career, but they're against kind of no names. There's nothing notable there. And he doesn't even really even go for it. Like he is very much a position guy. Capital B, capital O, capital S, etc. Over submission. So he doesn't really have a way to finish Soljic. And I think Soljic at some point just going to finish him. He's never been beaten. 2 undefeated fighters. Combined record I think is like 27-0 between these two. Or no, I'm thinking of a different fight where they undefeated. Because of course, Soljic has lost. He's 20-3. He's lost to Dricus du Plessis, and he's lost to Amazov, the Bellator champion, as well as a really, really early fight loss to Marko Radakovic, who is, I've never heard of him, but he is, 10-4 at least. He's had a decent career. Still fighting predominantly in Eastern Europe, though, so that is what it is. I've got Soldiers by TKO here or by KO, most likely. But and we got to talk about the other elephant in the room here is that one is known for giving some janky things with weight cutting, with scoring, with the rules. You want a recent example of that? Look at Angela Lee's last fight, which after she lost, and I don't even think terribly controversially lost. Like it was a close fight. But by their own rules, I think she lost. No, we got to change that up. Shatri City Tong's just like, we got to change that up. Never underestimate them to just like completely screw over Ramazanov. Although a lot of their big acquisitions have lost, like Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson lost, and then they promptly did nothing with the guys who beat them, which is a shame. But I kind of, just because of that, I kind of want Merab to win, but I do want Roberto Soldic to do very, very well. I wish he had come to the UFC. This is going to be a weird statement. I trust the UFC to be more fair than I do trust one. Old man Edward Folayang is back in the cage at 38 years old. I am picking him to lose. I know he doesn't usually get TKO'd. And Edson Marquez really realistically is a finish hunter. But it just feels like he's slowing down and dropping. It just feels like his physicality is going downwards. And this is a weight class where I don't think you can get away with that. So, Edson Marquez by TKO. I'm intrigued by the fact that Lowen Tines is a huge favorite. Well, not a huge favorite, but a sizable favorite against Daesung Park. I think Park's going to win. I think like what Tines is a fun, scrappy guy and everything, but like at no point does he seem to be in control of the fight. At no point does he seem to be defining a fight. And I think Park can work with that. I could be wrong. Like I am not tremendously familiar with Park. I don't generally watch Road FC, but this feels very winnable. But I was seeing odds at putting Park at like a plus 300 underdog. By the way, I've not been talking about betting odds throughout this whole thing up until this point. Do not bet on one fights. Do not. There is too much jankiness to 1. Do not bet. I say do not bet on MMA in general unless you can afford to lose money. Do not even bet the money you can afford to lose on 1. Anyways, I've got Park by decision. And then another really fun fight. We've got Hichin Lin versus Denise Zamboanga, which I love that name. Lin is a taller girl, 4 inches tall, somehow only has an inch of reach. I'm not really sure I buy that. I know that Denise is pretty long in the arms, does have a longer reach than her 5'2" height would suggest. But Lin's also pretty lanky at 5'6", I think. So I don't know. I'm not sure I trust that. But I've got Lin by decision. Now I can see this fight going either way. Zamboanga is a fun fighter. If you have fights to watch prepping for this, go watch Soljic versus Dricus Duplessis twice, but go watch Zamboanga versus Sohee Ham. Both of their fights are fantastic. She throws incredible volume. She's aggressive, pathologically so. She is surprisingly willing and effective. I don't know about good, but effective at throwing like a flurry of punches and then getting into a takedown. She's strong. She's explosive. She's fast. But she does slow down. 2, Lin showed me something when she stuffed a lot of Itsuki Harada's takedowns. Harada is not Zamboanga in terms of speed and probably not even explosiveness or persistence or pace. But she's a monster. And Lin was really kind of able to shut down a lot of what she was doing. And frankly, the only thing that lost her the fight was the fact that at the end of the second round, she got caught in a Kimura. And at the end of the third round, she got hurt really badly. And one judges the fight as a whole, really, really, really values possible fight-ending stuff. I have no problem with that. I'm just stating that to be the case. And that is why she got the loss. But for most of the fight, she was able to shut down the wrestling game of Harada. And Zamboanga does fade as the fights goes on. That was what lost her both the Sohee Ham fights, was slowing down and not being able to replicate her breakneck pace that she comes out with for the entire fight. And Lin has a good sprawl, has good range keeping game. She doesn't seem to hit particularly hard, but she does have really, really nice leg kicks. She does have a long reach, even though apparently it's only 1 inch of difference. But I think effectively it's going to be much more. She'll work infighting in pretty well. She's not simply broken by pressure. And Zamboanga is also coming off of like 2 fights, the first 2 losses in her career. You always got to wonder what that does to a fighter. And the closest to like beating a really solid opponent that Zamboanga has, because she's come up on the Filipino scene and through one, and they've made a point to push her. Her big win is like, for example, like put it this way. Her first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opponents had one combined fight before they fought her, and it was a loss. And her only really big win is Shadowcat, Jin Radzawan, who is really willing to work from the guard, like very comfortable working from guard, and gave takedowns to her. Lin's not going to do that. So I'm taking Hichin Lin, but I'm hoping it's great. And Zamboanga is 25 years old. She can probably learn more. She's kind of I forget if she's married to her coach or if it's her brother. I don't remember. They have the same last name. I know that. Can I find out? Is she married somewhere? No, it's her older brother, Drex. Okay. That's better. But the familial connection, I think, um, might limit her in the long run because it's not like there's anyone else in her camp doing great things at a Maroc gym. It's fine. It's a fine gym. But when your other big tickets are Drex Zamboanga and Jeremy Miadow, and I know Stan Fairtex does spend some time there, but I don't know. I just worry that I worry that she'll make the correct adjustments at any point. And I think that those correct adjustments have to be made at some point. And additionally, we got some Muay Thai action. We got some grappling on the card. Cade Rotolo is on the card. I like him. He's great. He's fantastic. And yeah, it's worth your time. It's not worth picking up the Prime subscription if you don't have it already. But I am under the impression that a lot of people have the Prime subscription to watch this already. It's not a bad investment of your Friday night. So 8 p.m. And you can watch it for free afterwards. Just saying. As per usual, you can find below, to the left, to the right, or above, wherever you are, links to other places you can take this podcast. Discord, my Twitter, my Twitches, my YouTubes are all on there. Check out the Discord channel in particular. Like, I feel like this needs to be boosted out there and put out there. Granted, I don't think I have much of a non-Discord viewership, but hey, it's a good place to be. We do simulated mixed martial arts fights where you can create a fighter and kind of guide them through a career and see what happens. And we also have Slam Ball Simulator there, as well as Pro Wrestling Simulator, which will be a weekly roundup posted tonight by Simulator Master Doug Braddock, aka the braggadocious one. So that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back tomorrow with the breakdown of the UFC fight card. Is this the Miami fight card that we got coming up? Yes. Yeah. Orlando, not Miami, but the Orlando fight card, which is actually pretty stat. You got Tai Tuivasa and Sergey Pavlovich on there. You got Wonderboy Kevin Holland. You've got RDA versus Brian Barberena, which I would really prefer, like RDA versus Holland and Barberena versus Thompson, but that's just me. Matthias Nicolau, Matt Schnell, also a good fight. Roman Dolidze, Jack Hermanson, Eric Anders versus Kyle Daukus, Nico Price versus Philip Rowe, Angela Hill versus Emily Ducati, which I am really excited by. Clay Guida and Scott Holtzman, Michael Johnson, Mark Diakiese, not big on either of those fights. Not big on seeing Darren Elkins fight Jonathan Pierce, but hey, it's there. I'm looking forward to Tracy Cortez versus Amanda Hebush. Natan Levy versus Gennaro Valdez is just, it's there. It's going to be fun enough. Francis Marshall versus Marcelo Rojo is a little interesting, I guess. And Yasmin Yargui versus Estela Nunez. I'm interested in what Yasmin Yargui can do, so I'm still interested in that fight. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. See you next time. And I don't know, just enjoy life, guys.